Hi, my name's Sophie and I'm a member of staff here at SPIDR Unlimited. I will be hosting this webinar today. As you can probably see on the screen, the title of this particular webinar is Managing Scope. So for the last few months, we've been doing a series of webinars covering various different topics. And like I said, today's one is going to be Managing Scope. This other gentleman who you can see is Mark Eaton. He is our training manager here at SPIDR Unlimited. He's going to be running you through it today, so welcome. If anyone does come in late, this webinar will be on our YouTube channel, as are all the other webinars that we've been doing, just SPIDR Unlimited on YouTube, so you can access those there if you would like to. So at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you do come up with any questions, feel free to just pop them in the chat box that you can see at the bottom of your screen, and Mark and I will revisit those at the end. We welcome any kind of questions, and obviously that makes the experience even better for you if you can pop those in. But if you're not feeling too inquisitive today, we do have a few frequently asked questions that I will pose to Mark. Just we think they're useful for you to know. So I will hop off now and leave you in Mark's capable hands. So enjoy, everyone, and I will return for the Q&A session later. Enjoy.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest webinar in our project management series. I think we're up to about 7 now, as Sophie said, and today we're going to look at something that is very often seen as a bit mysterious to some people around the project. Obviously, if you're a professional project manager or an experienced project manager, you'll be well aware of this, but it's something that is called scope, and sometimes I find that there's a lot of misunderstanding of what is scope and how it should be treated. So we're going to look at 3 elements today. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes talking a little bit about the management of scope, and I want to make sure that we have a basic understanding of what scope is. Okay, I've got a fantastic example from you. Hopefully you'll be able to use it in your explanations of what scope, and perhaps in the chat box you could sort of help me as well and give me your what you actually use as examples when you're talking about what is scope. So hopefully by the end of this webinar we'll have a good understanding of what scope is. Yeah. We're then going to look about the management of scope, and we're going to look at 2 things in the management of scope. We're going to look at the use of user stories in identifying scope, and we're also going to talk about creating contingency within scope as well. Okay, how can we use scope as one of the contingencies? I'm sure if you've done any project management training at all, or if you've read anything about project management, you've seen the iron triangle, which identifies and links time, cost and quality. But obviously for those of you who've experienced life in project management, you'll know that it's a bit more complicated than that. It's a lot more complex than that. And we're going to look at can we add to that scope. Okay, so let's not mess about too much. Let's start with the basic definition of scope. So the Association of Project Management, who on their website they've got a fantastic glossary on there, and within that they define scope as the totality of the outputs, outcomes and benefits and the work required to produce them. So it's really important, guys, if we're going to say that, we have an understanding of what an output, an outcome and a benefit is. So an output is something that your project will produce. It's the products of your project. And the totality of those products, the products that make up the deliverable, okay, or in Prince 2 they refer to it as the project product. Those products are part of the scope of your project, but so are the outcomes. And remember, an outcome is the change that is created by the use of the outputs. So very often we use the term capability to refer to the outputs, and that capability and the use of that capability creates an outcome, creates some sort of change in the way that you do business. And that's part of the scope. Those outcomes should be part of the scope of your project. Yeah, so that we're delivering not only capability, but we're also delivering a change as well. And then, of course, benefits are the measurable elements of that change. Most organisations will use key performance indicators for their benefits, and the thing with the benefit is it's a measurable component of the outcome. So all these things are part of the scope of your project. Okay, they define that scope. Yeah. So a great example is, for me, breakfast. Okay, so the example I'm going to use today is, what did you have for breakfast? And as you can see on screen, we've got some flakes, we've got some fruit, there's probably some sort of milk or dairy product involved in that as well. Yeah. And how important, if you think about what you had for breakfast and the different elements that make up your breakfast, how important was each element? What if you'd have gone to the fridge this morning and there was no milk? How would you have adapted your breakfast? Would you have changed it completely, or would you have done without? Okay, and that's really important. Which elements of your scope, of the outputs and the outcomes and the benefits of your project, do we think we can not live without, or live without any consequences? So for me, in the example that's on screen there, yeah, if the blueberries weren't available, if I run out of blueberries, it wouldn't be a big deal. I might even replace them with something that I do have that will be of an equivalent to those blueberries, banana or strawberries, etc., etc. So this is a really good example. When people start to talk about what is the scope of the project, yeah, use anything that that is made up of a number of components, and you can define that scope within it. And then you can move on and you can talk about, is scope something that we should fix or flex? And this is really important from a project manager's perspective. What do we fix and what do we flex? And traditional project management, the predictive project management, the two most common things that you would flex will be time and cost. And as project management has matured and moved, and I don't know if any of you have adopted any agile project management values or behaviours. Yeah. The more that it seems, and the more you look at it, you realise that from a business perspective, yeah, flexing time and cost is not really what they want to do. One of the most interesting conversations I've ever had as a project manager with one of my sponsors was the day when they turned to me and said, how much is this project going to cost us? And I actually turned back to them and said, let's look at it a different way. How much money are you willing to spend? And that's a much more interesting approach to your project than just planning it all out and saying, right, it will cost X. Because very often, and this is where I changed my behaviour, very often the answer when you come back with a price is, can it be cheaper? Can it be quicker? Okay? Can I get more for my money? So it's really important that, when we're looking at the different elements of our project, the different objectives of our project, and looking at what we fix and what we flex, my adoption of agile values means that I now fix time and cost, and I flex scope much more readily. Yeah, because what I can focus on is what is of value. Because very often, as I move through my career as a project manager, very often I get to the end of the project and think, I've delivered a lot that is of very little value. Why did I not just stop when I delivered the stuff that was of value? Or why did I not think of value? And value is an odd thing for a project manager, because it's not really something that you can look at. It's a very intangible objective within a project environment, because value, things that are very expensive can be seen as valuable to some people, whereas something that's free but vital, Google, for example, yeah, is of massive value compared to its cost. So we've got to really think about what is of value within our, what is vital and what is important. Because what is vital is what I'm going to fix in my scope. Where what is important is something that I might be able to flex. Now, which bit of it is important? Which element of it? So once again, I'd encourage you guys, if you've not thought about this, is to look at scope as a flexible objective. Something that we can do. And I want to spend a couple of minutes now just investigating that a little bit more. And one of the base techniques that I use for thinking about scope is to think about user requirements, something called a user story. And user stories are a way for me to identify value, and a way for the project sponsor or steering group or project board or whatever governance board, whatever you call them, to help them identify value. So we focus in on the user story as a user, okay? And that could be anybody. That could be somebody who is an end user, somebody who is going to use the information to provide value to the organization, or use a particular process, or use a particular service, or use a building. Yeah. Or it could be somebody who's going to support those end users. So it could be somebody, my background is IT infrastructure. And I would always have to think in my project about the support of that infrastructure that I was putting in. Was it easy to support? Were people able to support it across its life? Yeah. So as a user, either an end user or as a support user, I want to do something. I need to be able to do it. I need to be able to support the users. I need to be able to add a new user. Okay? I need to be able to get into the building at a time that I require. I need to be able to access my bank account details over the internet so that I can achieve an outcome, so that I can do something. And a lot of people misunderstand the user story as the user story is something that identifies scope. No, what it does is it identifies the elements of scope. Yeah? A user story is a placeholder. So if my user story, and let's have a look at a typical user story. Yeah? As a customer, I need to cancel a hotel booking so that I can get a refund. Yeah? Notice there's no solution within that particular user story. The solution, what will become the scope, is what the technical side of the project decides is the solution to that particular user story. So it's going to be a web page, it's going to be a payment handling system, it's going to be several different elements are going to be involved in the solution to that user story. Security, for example. So this is an example of a story that will help us identify scope. But as it shows us value, then it can help us prioritize and include things in the scope. Is that a value? Is that something that is vital to my user? Because it's vital to the user, it's vital to my solution, therefore it's got to be fixed into scope. Because without it, I'm not going to be able to deliver anything. And a lot of you will have heard the term MVP, minimum viable product. And there's a very big misunderstanding. I know a lot of people think that if I deliver, if you think about it, if it's the minimum viable product, why would you do anything else? Because you've done the minimum, it's viable, and it's a product. So once you've delivered the MVP, if you profess to be agile and following the agile values, you stop. That's why I like to think of it much more as a minimum marketable feature, MMF. That's a much better acronym in my book. Okay? Because I've done the minimum to be able to actually get some sort of feedback from my users of how important that feature is to them and how important the solution is that we've delivered to them. So it's really important, guys, that that we understand that scope is made up of things that are of value to our organization. Super duper. So, yeah. Moving on. Where a lot of people say to me, well, that's good, Mark, but what if we've got something that looks like it's going to take 4 weeks and we've only got 2 weeks? Well, let's break it down. Yeah, let's break the story down. Okay, and here I've broken it down into hotel, whether you're a Premier customer or a non-Premier customer. So I don't know if any of you have got hotel loyalty cards. Yeah. And you can have loyalty cards at different levels. And if you are a Premier, you get the full refund in what you paid, whereas perhaps as a non-Premier customer, yeah, there's a cancellation fee that's deducted. Okay, so you can break it down into smaller stories and you can deliver the minimum marketable feature, which is anybody, and then if you've got time, you can break it down into smaller user stories, which will help you produce something which is of value. And then we've got prioritization. And, the vital stuff I like to refer to as critical. What is critical? Because those are the stuff that we're going to fix. And if you think about something that you use every day, Microsoft Office or Google Docs or your proprietary organizational software for monitoring payments. Do you use every feature? Is every feature on that piece of software critical? If not, identify the ones that are. Okay? And back in the day, not so long ago, I remember when a print feature would have been classed as critical. You had to print. Whereas nowadays, I'm not so sure. Do I have to print? Sometimes I would like to print. Do I have to print? Yeah. So we can see that priorities and value can change over time. So we fix the stuff that's critical, whereas the stuff that we should have and that we could have, then we sort of flex. Can we flex those? Yeah. Can we leave them out completely? Can we leave the blueberries out completely? Is a question that we would have to ask ourselves. Yeah. Is that something? Or won't have this time, we're not going to have it, it's not going to be part of our scope. So one way of managing scope is to build contingency through scope. Which elements of your scope are you going to fix that they must be delivered? Your minimum marketable features. And which ones are you going to flex? So you should have them, or you could have them. And in the DSDM framework, they break that down to about 60% of the effort should be fixed, whereas 40% of the effort should be divided up into should haves and could haves. And notice that's based on effort, yeah? Not just a number of stories or a number of features. That's built on effort. So we build priorities to help us create contingency in scope. And that, sometimes people struggle with Agile, and one of the reasons I've noticed is because some of it is counterintuitive. It's not built into our way of thinking. Leave something out, not deliver something. But as one of my delegates on one of my courses once said, the reason they switched wholeheartedly to Agile was because they delivered less but got more. Okay, they delivered less as part of their scope, but they got more value as part of their benefits, which, as we discussed earlier, are part of scope. So those are just a few thoughts, guys. Yeah, a few thoughts on how we can manage scope and manipulate scope within our project environment, so that we can deliver our projects successfully. So I'm going to call Sophie back in. She's got some questions. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to use the chat area down at the bottom there. So I don't know if that's underneath Sophie and yours, or Sophie's just popped up on top. Okay, good. Yeah, so, you know, feel free if you've got any questions, guys, to pop some chat. We've got some frequently asked questions that we're going to do in like an interview session right now.
Frequently asked question
that we get there and Sophie will read them out
apart from scope, what other contingencies can the project manager manipulate?
Well, for me, as I've said already, the time and cost should be fixed. If you believe in something called a business case, which I'm pretty sure most of the people who are watching this particular webinar do, then time and cost are vital elements of the investment. So you can use them as contingency, but there's a really strong business argument for not doing. Quality. So a lot of people say that you should fix quality. And once again, in an agile world, we have a different attitude. There is a minimum amount of quality that you fix, but then there's an element of quality that you can flex. The other two quite common contingencies, of course, are risk and benefit. Yeah, and once again, these are some things that you can decide on a project by project basis. Are we going to fix or are we going to flex? So, for example, if your project is to be compliant, then very often you will fix risk, risk tolerance it's referred to, okay? Because obviously you've got to be compliant, and any risks to not being compliant.
So the next question we get is, so what happens to the features that are not then delivered by the project?
Yeah, well, once again, this is a very common question for people who are using scope as part of their contingency, and there will be an element very often of features that you've not delivered during the project. This is often referred to as technical debt. Okay, and this is why prioritization is really important, because the better you prioritize your features, the less technical debt you're going to carry, because you'll have just left off the stuff that has very little value, and then you'll build them into business as usual, or sometimes
doesn't allowing the team to have the ability to not deliver some features threaten quality.
That's once again, this is something that we get asked time and time again. People who come on our agile courses ask this and say, look, if the team know that they don't have to deliver stuff, surely they don't deliver it. And this is why, for me, agile needs an element of professionalism, okay, or it needs an element of discipline, because we plan to deliver everything. The plan always says by the end of the project we should deliver something. It's only if life intervenes that we change that particular plan. I'm sure most people watching this webinar have come across that, where life has intervened onto their best laid plans. Yeah. So once again, it's about ensuring that you've got a good good agile coach in place, a good leadership team within your project environment, so that the team understands that you're expecting everything. So do you think that attitude plays a big part in it then? Yeah, that they can't shy off, type of thing. Massive part of it. Okay, and this is why we promote on our courses team. Yeah, so rather than individual responsibilities, we have team responsibilities, so that the attitude is not just an individual, cannot be knocked sideways by the attitude of an individual. It's the attitude of the team.
Is what if additional requirements are identified later on in the project? So what happens then?
Well, first things first, they will. Okay, the attitude of the project manager and the project leadership team should always be that change is inevitable. We will miss things off, we will forget things, we will discover new ways of doing things as we move through the project. And this is once again where prioritisation really comes into place, because if something comes in that we think is critical, yeah, then we can replace something that was just a could have, something would have been nice to have. So you see, it's often referred to as swapping, yeah, where you swap one feature with a similar feature of lower value that had the same amount of effort. Okay, so that you can keep your project on track to do that. Saying that, if you've got a feature that increases the number of critical and you don't have that room, this is what, you know, change management and leadership management is all about. It's about ensuring.
Okay, great. Well, if no one has any questions of their own, then we will start the conclusion. So, as a thank you for participating today, we have a 20% off discount code, which is PM Series. You can use that on for 20% off any of our courses. So please feel free to do that. We have another couple of webinars coming up in the next few weeks. Do you happen to know off the top of your head what next week's is? Oh, it's right there, monitoring and controlling. So feel free to register for that if you would like to know a bit more. And we're doing them every week now till Christmas, I believe. No, not Christmas week, no. Yeah. So yeah, we would love to see you on that. So like I said at the beginning, if you did happen to miss any of the start, this one will be on our YouTube channel by the end of the day, as are all of our other webinars that we've been doing in this series. So if you'd like to catch up on a few of those, then feel free to take a look. Our YouTube channel is just SPIDR Unlimited. Now, Mark, I'll hand over to you to talk a little bit more about what we have coming in the new year. Very exciting.
This, guys, is our accredited offering at this moment in time. But in the new year, and I'm quite excited about this, we've got some new courses coming up. And one of the ones that I want to promote right now is this one here, MSP. If you're involved in program management, Managing Successful Programs have just updated to their 5th edition. And I'm pleased to announce that I've personally been accredited to train it, and as an organisation we will be accredited to train it from the new year. So we'll be putting in a schedule of courses. I also want to mention, Sophie, if you don't mind, because we've got a couple of minutes extra, that we've actually got a couple of courses over the next 2 weeks. December is traditionally a quiet time for training, but we have the Agile Business Consortium's Scrum Master course next week, next Monday, Tuesday. And we've got a few places left. If anybody's free next week and wants a bargain, if they go to our website and get in touch with our sales guy and our sales team, they've got some really good prices for the Scrum Master 2-day Scrum Master course next Monday, Tuesday. And then the following week, at the last course before Christmas that we're putting on at this moment in time, is a full 5-day Agile Project Management course. Once again, we've got a few places left on that one and some really good prices on that one, should anybody wish to actually book themselves onto that one. Once again, go to the SPIDR
So I think we'll round it off there.
And get themselves
so thank you everyone for participating today, and we hope to see you again in the future. Thank you very much.